Hello YouTube, this is Shirley426, and today we have the review of the War for Cybertron Kingdom Commander Class Rodimus Prime. So, due to like slow releases of Gunpla these days, I am trying out new stuff. So, unless like there's a whole new series or a batch of Gunpla kits coming out, even including Premium Bandai, then I'll be going back to those. But since there's nothing much coming out, just expect me to review some random stuff as well, including the Transformers. Now, I can't say I grew up with Transformers, but I've seen a good amount of like animation, and then I also did some research and studied about Transformers as well. So, a few weeks ago, I did review the Studio Series. Keep in mind, this guy is a Studio Series, Hot Rod, and now, after noticing that Korea is now finally officially selling Rodimus Prime, which is not the best price because I believe like other countries are selling this guy for like 80 bucks. In Korea, they jacked up the price a lot, even from Hasbro Korea. So, not too happy about the price, but I am somewhat satisfied with the product. Alright, so let's see what we got. So, here we have the figure itself. So, let me just get it off the stand, and just right off the bat, let's go with comparisons. So, now, for those who don't know, this is Hot Rod. The small one is Hot Rod. These two are technically the same characters, but after Optimus Prime died because of you-know-who, which is this guy, he was the next guy to basically be chosen by the Matrix of Leadership, and once the Matrix of Leadership has chosen Hot Rod, the Matrix kind of upgraded him into Rodimus Prime. Hence, you can see he has become much more bigger. And while he does still transform into his typical car mode, but he also now gets a new trailer to become a more of a truck-ish, design. I'll get into this one later. Alright, so before we go to articulation, let's see what you're supposed to get. So first of all, what you get, of course, is obviously Rodimus Prime himself. You get Rodimus Prime himself, and definitely looking good. And compared to the old young look, the face definitely looks a little bit more mature and older and wiser. So I think they did a pretty good job. Now, some people don't like this more older look, but I think it's acceptable at this point. And then if you can flip this down, it reveals the Matrix of Leadership. I believe this is the same mold as the one we got from Studio Series Hot Rod. So yeah, and you are able to pull it out. Now, one thing I've noticed just recently is that the scale of these are very off. Like, if you've seen the movie, you can see like he can actually hold the Matrix of Leadership with these handles, with all of his 4 fingers inside. This one, you can't even fit. You can barely fit a single finger inside here. So yeah, that's kind of an odd scale. So yeah, I wish they would have made a bit bigger, or made a separate effect part, and you can detach the hands, and then there would be a single solid piece with 2 hands holding the Matrix of Leadership. That would have been much better, but oh well, who am I to judge? Alright, so that's pretty much it for the basics of the figure components. And here we have some other stuff. So number one, we get his like gun. I'm not too familiar with these weapon names. Like, I know like Megatron's his weapon is like the fusion cannon, and then like Optimus Prime's blaster is called the Ion Blaster or something like that. And Starscream's like Null Wave, but still, I am not too familiar with the weapon names, so I'm just gonna call this like a gun. So yeah, it's a very long gun. Now there's these 2 pegs. I am assuming that you are able to do a 2-handed pose with these guns, or with this weapon. So I did take a picture of that. And for storage, you actually you can fold this up, and then I believe this is how you store it onto the vehicle mode or onto the back of the figure. So let's try that out. So according to the manual, they're supposed to plug it in like this, and there's a hole here, and they're supposed to be able to store the weapon onto the back like that, and it actually works. Okay, of course I would think okay, so it doesn't really hinder the articulation that much, so I guess this is supposed to be something like this. And then we get this, a sword. So according to some other videos, they call this the Sword of Primus. I'm not too familiar with this sword as well. Once again, I did see Transformers Prime, and then the only sword I know from that series is the Star Saber, and this is no Star Saber. Now, as you can see, we have this peg here. You can pull it out, and you're supposed to be able to hold it, store it onto the back, like a typical warrior or sword-ish going on. So that's cool. I do like these type of weapon storage mints as well. And of course, if you want to, I guess you could kind of jam it into this part as well, but once again, it doesn't really make sense if you ask me. And I think something popped out. So technically, I am having like the transformation for this figure. What I've seen is that, or experiencing, is that you have to be like, everything has to be like in a very specific position to like everything to fit in. So yeah, that's one issue I'm having, but it still works. So yeah. Alright, so we have the sword, and then I believe once again you can use this peg to store it in other areas, or when Rodimus Prime goes into his car mode, you can actually store the sword onto the bottom, which may sound like a bad idea, but you'll get the idea later. And then we get a bunch of effect parts. So number one, I believe right off the box, if I remember correctly, it comes out like this. Now this may look like a huge chunk of a single piece of a effect part, but no, it's actually 4 pieces. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4 effect parts. So you can use any size you want, any length you want. And then we get 3 of these typical blast effect parts. So they can be used, they can be combined with these parts to make a typical more stronger blast effect. Or according to the manual, I'm not going to show every place that you can plug it in, but you can also plug it into these back holes to give the truck a like boost effect look as well. So that's a pretty good effect. So that's what the manual mentioned, and there is actually a little bit more effect parts. So let me just get rid of these. Now looking at the back of the truck. So here, this is where you connect the vehicle mode, and then you can see on the side, you can see there are these multiple holes here. So if you want to store the weapon like outside the truck form and not on the bottom of the car, what you can do is you can just like plug these in and right away, and it's stored there. So, and I believe for the blaster, the gun is much more tricky, but it's still, you can kind of manage it around, but still it is possible. Now what you can do is you can flip this section down, or actually before opening it, we have this part here, a component where you can slide out. Come on, oh, there we go. You can slide this out, and I've already put it in the effect part. So number one, we have this part, which is the effect part for the Matrix of Leadership, for its shining effect. So that's that. I believe we did get something similar from the Studio Series Hot Rod, but I believe that's a much more smaller version. So what you can do is you can plug it in like that, and bam, you get a very fancy effect. Oh, sorry about that. And then we get these. I was kind of surprised to see these in black. At first I was thinking, oh boy, what is this, a chemical or something like that? But still, according to the manual, yes, this is a effect part. These are supposed to be not for the truck, but for the vehicle form for Rodimus Primes. Basically for the like vents, these are supposed to be like smoke effects. So yeah. Of course, I believe the box shows it in a very different color, but yeah, don't get too scared. Unless this is some sort of like a mistake, do let me know. So as you can see, you are able to store these in there, but if you don't like to, you can always like slap in some other effect parts right over here like this and store them in on the bottom, or even the weapons, especially the sword. Now, I don't recommend the gun because sometimes the gun's peg may get in the way and when sliding out. So there was this one time I actually was really struggling to get this out because the pegs were actually stuck inside there. So yeah. And for the last component, what you can do is you can open this section up. Oops, there we go. And you can get this section down, and bam, we get like some sort of like a small attack station right over here. And you can see we have an extra cannon. Now, as someone who did not grow up with the G1 series, I've always wondered like what was inside of Optimus Prime's like the back storage unit. So according to like the other like masterpiece or other reference, apparently there was something similar to like this. There's a cannon inside and a few extra like land type vehicles. So yeah, you can also take this part, and yeah, this thing also has a pretty good decent amount of articulation. So I'll go into this one later, but we also have a peg on the bottom. Bam. So yeah. And then now I don't have any other examples at the moment. I don't have any smaller like Deluxe class or Voyager class units, but still I believe you are able to store them inside the back of the truck as well if you want to do so. And you can see there's all these ports going on here. So if you actually don't store this thing inside the back, you can actually store like a bunch of these weapons onto the inside here. So you can all connect these inside and store them inside. So there's like a lot of options you can do with this. So we've seen the basics of this one. So let me just get rid of that and see what we got for articulation. So Well, one thing I've noticed, like Transformers toys, they tend to have like more stuff. That's definitely a interesting thing because I'm keep in mind my channel is a Gunpla channel, so I'm more used to Gunpla, and usually Gunpla, unless it's like a very special unit, it usually comes with the typical stuff like one shield, one beam rifle, 2 beam sabers, and maybe a extra thing. So yeah. All right, so let's see what we got. Let me just get rid of the weapon just to make sure that you guys get the full experience. All right, so let's start with the head. Definitely loving the mature looking head. The head can go down. Okay, it's already down. Let me just adjust the camera angle. Okay, there we go. Okay, it can go down that much, up that much. That's actually a lot, or it can look that much. And then 360, it's very stiff, but it is possible. And I believe that is a ball joint, so no need to worry about like breaking a peg. Now, one thing that I did regarding the Studio Series Hot Rod, I didn't like the articulation because it was lacking a few articulation, especially on the shoulders. This one actually fixes that. Of course, it's not exactly goes forward and backward. It can go a little bit more. It does move like this, so it's kind of it's a little bit odd to say, but still it works. You have a forward and backward shoulder movement, but not exactly the way you think, compared to Gunpla. And then here we have a nice 360 twist on the arm, but once again, because of the back yellow wings or hood or spoiler, whatever you call that, you need to be aware where you're rotating. So just be careful. But you are able to go 360 like that. And let's see the arms. Now, when transforming the arm, you actually need to extend the arm. So once extended, you have a nice double bended joint there, very nice. And then I believe you are able to rotate the lower arm. Come on, you are able to rotate the lower arm, but because of this part right over here, do be careful where you're going through. And the hands. Now, I believe Hot Rod did had something similar, but his was more of a not individual fingers, but the entire fingers that's moved together. This one, you have the 3 fingers moving to on the bottom, and then together, and then we have the extra pointing finger that actually has like individual articulated parts right over here. So that's actually pretty good. Now, the fingers are a little bit stiff on mine, so I almost broke something, but luckily it did not break, so that's good. And then you have a nice wrist articulation going 360, and you can go a little bit onto the inside if you want to do so, like that. All right. Now, I've already showed you guys the chest. Now let's look at the back. So once again, I'm not the biggest fan of this yellow giants like spoiler thing going on here. I'm assuming that this is robot form. It has to be like some sort of wings, but still not the biggest fan of this because it's just too big. Now, Hot Rod's was also pretty big, but it definitely got bigger. But one thing I do need to praise is that they added a lot more articulation going, not articulation, sorry, but a lot more details going on here. So it doesn't look any boring. And the color scheme, I do like the colors because while Studio Series, this definitely felt more like a toy, especially with the colors. But this one definitely feels like more of a collector's figure, if you ask me. And according to some people, this could be like almost not exactly masterpiece quality, but still it's close. Like basically some people call this the cheaper version of the masterpiece, so that's something. And other than the arms articulation I've shown, you can move the shoulders to the side like this, you can move the arms like this, and I think that's as far as it goes. Alright, now for the main body, you are able to go side to side, not exactly 360. Of course you can always go 360 if you want to do so. You can like move this section up. Of course you need to unpeg this. Now this peg has to go exactly inside there, and it's really tricky to get inside there because it has to be in a very specific position. But if you can ignore that, you can almost go, okay, still 360 not possible because I think there's still a few parts colliding, but still I think you are able to manage to go 360 because for the transformation you actually need to twist it. Alright, other than that, for the legs you can go to the side pretty well, not exactly 90 degrees, but still that much, and despite that you can still move the side skirts. There are no back skirts as far as I know. The front skirt, I believe, is not an individual piece, it's actually just pretty much connected to the joint, so going about 90 degrees or slightly up. And then back, not so much because it's colliding, there's a few parts colliding. Alright, and then let's see what we got. So So the legs, the bend. Oh, we also have a nice sisal going on here. Now I'm not sure if this is supposed to be paint or just. This definitely feels a little bit different. It's not die cast metal according to like Jobby De Hong's technique. So I think it's just paint. They just gave it a metallic look, not exactly metal. And then, so I guess this is what they call gloss paint. And then for the bend, you can bend this much as well. Of course, be careful where the joints are, because due to the transformation, the leg, the joint here may be in a very awkward position. So just make sure it's straightened up. And then for the feet, we have a nice bend on the toe. But of course, I think this is much more for the transformation. And then we can go to the forward like this. That's actually a lot when you think about it. And then we have a nice pivot. Now this does actually go slightly more compared to the Studio Series Hot Rod, but still not as much as I would like to, but still it works. Alright, so we've seen some basics of the articulation on Rodimus Prime, so definitely so far I am liking the figure. Of course, I think he could have been much cheaper than $130 in Korea. Alright, so I'll be right back with some demonstrations with this new equipment. Okay, I'm back. So here we have like one of the examples for using the trailer. So you can use this cannon without the trailer, but I usually tend to use it with the trailer because it's always stored inside the trailer. And yeah, it's pretty good. I do like the paint they did here. It's like a little bit silver here, but on the end tip it's black, so it's kind of gives out the idea that this weapon has been used for a while. And I've also attached like 2 effect parts. One is longer than the other one, using the extra blast effect part on the bottom to give off the idea where it's now the cannons are not shooting 2 rays at like 2 shots at the same time, but one after the other. So definitely good, and you can really position this pretty easily because thanks to the handles can actually, for example, can actually move like this. So positioning the cannon is no problem as well. And then for small details, you can move the cannon up this much and then down that much. And then I believe, according to some people, the cannon here has these extra shields going on here. So this is supposed to be there to protect the legs of the user. So that's I think that's a pretty good small detail they added in there. Now once again, if you don't want to use this and store it inside the trailer, what this is pretty much, you fold it in, just move the handles like that, and then you close up these trailers. So that's how it works. Now I'm pretty sure some of you guys are kind of wondering like what's the scale between this figure compared to Gunpla. So I actually brought out 2 examples. So number one, we're going to compare it with an HG and a Master Grade. So give me a moment. So here we have the figure, and then first let's see how it scales with a typical HGUC kit, so 1:144 scale Gunpla. So it's definitely much taller than that, but when we compare it to a 1:100 scale Gunpla, let's say for example the prototype Gundam, you can kind of see the Master Grade is still slightly taller, but you can definitely see it's, it almost matches the size. So now once again, I'm not calling Rodimus Prime a 1:100 scale because obviously the Transformers and Gundam are very different sizes. So obviously if we were to translate this would become a whole different number. So yeah, I would say for those who like to collect larger scale stuff, I think Rodimus Prime is also a good start for Transformers. Now, before we go to the vehicle mode, now I'm trying to save as much time as possible, but apparently there were just so much stuff to show. So let's look at the weapons really quick. So attaching the weapons is really easy. So you just need, because of the hand design here, you can just clip inside the hand and then fold up with the fingers, and you got the sword. And then for the gun, you don't even need to wrap it up. You can just plug it inside the hand and you're good to go. So that's how it works. And if you want to, and I did take a picture of this, let me just get rid of the sword, and you are able to kind of double wield the gun like this. And well, of course you're gonna need to position the weapon a little bit more better, but still you are able to hold it with 2 hands and reposition if you want to do so. Alright, so we've seen the weapons, we've seen the articulation, we've seen the Rodimus Prime himself. Now I'll be right back with his vehicle mode. Okay, I'm back. So here we have the vehicle mode. So I think now I don't think we need to compare this with the Hot Rod version because it has some similar form factors, but once again a little bit more chunkier if you ask me. So for the weapons, for the gun or blaster, you can fold it in this form, and then there's these 2 poles that will actually fit perfectly for the weapon, and you can store it like this. Now if you actually connect this to the truck mode, that becomes a little bit problematic where to store this, but still it works. And then here on the bottom is where you can actually store the sword. So the area that actually clips onto here is that there's these two pegs here, and you basically connect it here. And despite how it looks, just as an example, let me just reconnect that. Now you would think that this will actually just scratch the sword, but no, because that actually, thanks to the wheels, it's barely not actually touching the ground. But once again, I'm not the biggest fan of storing it like this. And here are those smoke effect parts. Now I'm gonna be honest, they don't look that great. I think they could have just gone with the flaming effect parts, or I don't know, maybe just white or gray to get it out that smoke look. Yeah, these just don't look that pleasant, if you ask me. Now, to connect to the truck is very simple. You just need to pretty much slide this in here. Of course, make sure, now these parts are spring loaded, so they will move back in place. There's basically a pusher here. There's a pusher here. You just need to make sure that pusher goes inside here, as far as I know. So you just need to connect that here, and bada bing, bada boom. There you go. You have the truck complete. Now, at this point, as I mentioned before, I do prefer to store the Sword of Primus on the outside like this. Whoops. Like that. And for the gun, I would just, I don't know, I would just find a random place to shove it in. But basically, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this gun, so yeah. Alright, so in truck mode, in this form, there's not much to do. Of course, I think I have a quality control issue where the clips will not lock into place properly. They just try to keep open up. So yeah, if I was a very picky customer, I would have like returned this, but still, I didn't want to wait another extra week regarding that. So yeah. Now, a lot of other reviews pointed out is that you can open this section up. Now, this you can also flip. You can flip it outside. And if you have a smaller figure, you can actually put it inside there. Now I took out the cannon to test out something else, but yeah, you could totally fit a different, vehicle inside there if you can. And we have these metal pistons going on here, or cylinders, whatever they call it. So yeah, they actually add some extra nice details going on here. And other than that, if you're wondering, no, this is not a sticker as far as I know. This is like pretty much painted on there. So, or yeah, basically definitely not something you can scratch off that easily. But I mean, if you want to, you could scratch it off. But still, I think it doesn't really give out that, I'm a sticker vibe. So yeah, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I do like this. I definitely didn't expect this to be this really good, and I'm actually a big fan of the vehicle mode as well. It definitely is a unique design, and some people call out this is actually more of a camping car design, but still, who knows. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the review. This was the review of the War for Cybertron Kingdom Commander Class Rodimus Prime. If you guys got any questions or requests, leave a comment below. I still have more stuff to buy and build and make reviews out, so please stay tuned. Until then, see you guys next time.